Hey friends, one and all, welcome to the Zirian Memories Honorable Mentions. Only half as prestigious as the Oscars, with a bajillion times more the visual novels. Jokes aside, it's been a long month and a half for me, but hopefully a short one for you. We have effectively reached the second to last entry in Z Memories, Day 11. And I thought, before we move on to what is undoubtedly my favorite visual novel series of all time, we can take a nice little look at all the visual novels that I thought about putting on this list, but didn't end up doing so for one reason or another. Reasons which we will talk about today. Honestly speaking, plenty of these visual novels are probably much better than the actual ones I chose, but didn't quite have the personal experience or nostalgia that I wanted to talk about. Let's just get right to it. First one I'm gonna shout out is Fate Stay Night. Obviously, I have name dropped it so many times to see memories, and I bet all of you have either played it or at least know what it is. The reason why this Nasu work didn't make this list is quite simple. I had a choice between choosing Fate or Tsukihime, and I just really truly love Tsukihime more. Just between the two of us, well, I suppose really me and everyone watching, although I have consumed so much Fate media, like I've played FGO the arcade game, Fate Unlimited Code, Fate Extra CCC, read Fate Prototype, Fate Strange Fake, watched Fate UBW, Fate Zero, Carnival Phantasm, and of course, played Fate the visual novel, I actually do not like the original story that much. It took me a while to come to that realization. There are parts of it I think are amazing. I dig Emiya's theme song, some fights are really cool, like Emiya beating Hercules in Heaven's Feel, or really every climactic fight in the game. But I'm not the biggest fan of Saber, Tosaka Rin, Sakura, Emiya, Kotomine. Actually, really, the only two characters I like from the original are Archer and Lancer, probably because Lancer is such a bro, and Archer's fight with Hercules in Studio Dean's adaptation is what got me into the franchise in the first place. Maybe Fate Hollow Atraxia might have changed my mind, but I actually haven't gotten to that one either. I also played Tsukihime first before I've played Fate, and I just like Koaku so much more than any of the heroines in Fate. Another visual novel I cut for Z Memories was the Zero Escape series. The Zero Escape series, for those who don't know, is referring to the trilogy composed of 999, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, Virtue's Last Reward, and Zero Time Dilemma. I mentioned this on day 8 during Little Busters, but I felt like the Zero Escape series had this problem, where the director and scenario writer Uchikoshi Kotaro, instead of using twists to tell a good story, he started to focus too much on trying to make the craziest, most insane twists that the reader will never see coming at the expense of the story. The first game in the series, 999, already has a twist ending that can charitably be described as kind of stupid. Then in the second game, Virtue's Last Reward, you can clearly see Uchikoshi stretching to try and make that game's main twist work. The reasoning is laughable at best, in my opinion. And then we reach the third game, Zero Time Dilemma. Oh man, that was just an insane mess of desperation, trying to piece together 3 separate convoluted plots full of time travel, human cloning, Nazis, determinism. It's such a train wreck. A really funny train wreck, don't get me wrong. I've never laughed quite so hard at a story that was taking itself 100% seriously. So clearly, I had a lot of fun stuff I could talk about for the series, but I didn't really have any fun personal stories to talk about. Most of what was funny would have just been pure spoilers, and the base story there isn't much for me to go on. There also wasn't a topic to bring up like with Beat Blades Haruka or Little Busters, so it would just be me talking about the series itself, which I felt like I really couldn't do justice in a shorter video. Since I'm already talking about Uchikoshi, I can quickly go over the other series he did, the Infinity series, which is a group of science fiction visual novels composed of Ever 17, Remember 11, Never 7, Riven 12, and that one other one we don't talk about. Ever 17 and Remember 11 didn't make the cut either, mostly because I already did a visual novel primer, basically an introduction video for those new to this channel, on Ever 17, and there just wasn't much for me to add that I didn't already cover in that previous video. If you want to hear more about Ever 17, just go watch my primer on it, which I'll link in the top right corner right about now. Remember 11 might have been interesting. Unfortunately, I do not have the visual novel anymore, so I wouldn't have been able to get the footage, and I don't really know what I would have to say about it in the first place. The next visual novel that potentially could have made it is one that I know all of you have either played or watched. That being Steins Gate, and I'll also throw in Chaos Head in there. I actually wanted to include a Nitro Plus entry on this list if possible, so I was thinking something along the lines of Kishin Hoko Demon Bane or Kikokugai the Cyber Slayer. I'd even considered Sayonouta, except that sort of visual novel is personally not up my alley at all. Anyways, Steins Gate is an excellent visual novel, and also a fantastic anime, but come on, you don't need me to tell you that, you know that already. It's literally rated as the second best anime of all time on my anime list, right under Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. It's one of those rare times where the anime adaptation of a visual novel is equally as good as the source material. I'm sure this ain't a national secret or anything, but anime adaptations of visual novels are like live-action movie adaptations of video games, in that they're usually pretty shitty. I can probably count the good ones I know of on one hand, like Planet After Story, Little Busters, Steins Gate, Fate Unlimited Blade Works, Higurashi. On the other hand, bad ones are a dime a dozen, like Love Love Alternative, Boulder Force, Schwartz Marksman, DS Urai, Magikoi, Blast Blue, Wind the Breath of Heart, Yuno, Chaos Head, just to list a few. There is just that something that doesn't translate well between the mediums, which I could potentially get into as a future topic. Yuno is an especially good example of many things being lost in adaptation. Going back to Steins Gate, I also really didn't have a personal history with it. I played it quite late in its lifespan. Like when the anime first came out, I believe is when I first played the visual novel itself. So pretty much about 2 years ago. It's good. I could even say it's amazing, but I don't have much more to say aside from that. Chaos Head on the other hand, well, to be honest, I don't like it that much. I played the original, and someone has told me to check out Noah, which is a remake of sorts, but I have to admit, I cannot stand the main character, which is 100% done on purpose for the sake of the story, but he is one annoying character to follow. As for other honorable mentions, I actively refrained from talking about any more Alisoft games, cause I already knew Beat Blades Haruka and Gaozu Island were making this list for sure from the get-go. So I didn't even consider putting in Daibancho, Daiteikoku, Daikuji, Toshin Toshi 3, or Dorapeko. But I already did a visual novel primer on Daibancho, so I didn't feel the real pressing need to put it on this list as well. Another studio I wanted to represent was Usually, and it was going to be on Himegari Dungeon Meister. But the only reason I chose not to do it was that, again, there wasn't that much of a personal reason for me to talk about. I could talk about the game itself, how it's a pretty decent Fire Emblem-esque game, right down to the menu design, but beyond just describing it, I don't think there was much else for me to discuss about it. The only reason I remember it so fondly in the first place was that it was the second game I ever played in Japanese, which isn't exactly much of an achievement considering I already put the first one, Gaozu Island, during day 2. Bunny Black and Yumina the Ethereal were two more visual novels with similar reasons as to why I didn't include them for Z Memories. Katawa Shoujo was also a pretty strong contender for getting a spot on this list. Unfortunately for one, it's been a long time since I played it, but mostly two, I just don't quite remember anything to talk about besides its noteworthy creation in the first place. How it was born out of the concept images posted on 4chan, which then attracted a group who worked together to make that concept art into a real game. A really cool background story, but I don't feel confident in telling much of it since I only kind of followed their development story, and outside of that, I don't think I have anything more to comment about the visual novel itself. Since I'm talking about free popular visual novels, I suppose I'll mention Doki-Doki Literature Club. I will just get straight to the point here. I have not played it, and I'm not too interested in ever playing it. It might be because I have a friend who spoiled everything for me early on, but honestly it just sounds like a lower budget version of Kimi to Kanajo no Koi by Nitro Plus, which also does the whole metafiction Gao-gay deconstruction thing. Actually, I believe that the game I just mentioned is getting a surprise English release this year, although I'm pretty sure I heard it was announced a ridiculously long time ago. JAS also tends to delay things like crazy, and COVID-19 is a thing right now, so who knows how that's going. Umineko didn't make it either, reason this time being that I never got around to finishing it. Big shameful moment, I get it. I did 2 routes, and then I spoiled myself by accidentally talking to a friend about it, who didn't know I hadn't finished it yet. That kind of put a damper on my will to finish Umineko. Finally, the last visual novel that might have made it onto Z Memories was Cross Channel by Flying Shrine. It was one of my earliest visual novels that I read. I did have a fair story to talk about it, and it was one of the earliest ones where it was full of super crazy twists and really drew me into this entire genre in the first place. The only reason it didn't make the list was that I had 12 visual novels planned initially, but I decided to cut one out in favor of making this honorable mentions list you are watching right now. Mostly to answer people in advance on questions like, why didn't you talk about so-and-so? The choice was down between Shari no Kuni and Cross Channel, and I cut Cross Channel mostly because I played Cross Channel a long time ago, not using the Steam edition, but rather on Amaterasu's translation, and I just don't have a way to record the footage myself anymore. And I didn't feel like it was proper to use the Steam edition, considering it wasn't what I played when it first came out. And I've heard some people have pretty mixed opinions on the translation done by Moe Novel, and I think that about wraps up the honorable mentions. If you are confused as to why a specific visual novel that you like is not on Z Memories, it's probably because I have not played every visual novel in the world. A huge shocker, I know. In fact, there are many big ones that I just haven't gotten around to. Whether it be because I'm lazy, I'm not interested, or I have other ones that take precedence on my way too long of a backlog, which is a common problem I'm sure most of us share. Here, I can name drop a couple of series that I know people like, but I haven't played yet, like the Grisaya series, nearly all the Front Wing games, Aohana, Subarashiki Hibi, Higurashi, Corpse Party, Love Love Alternative, Soko Aki Muramasa, Danganronpa, Karo no Shoujo, and so on. If I haven't played it yet, doesn't mean I'll never play it. No, not necessarily. But I just don't have any current interest in jumping into any of them at the moment. I bet they're all good. I've had friends tell me they're good for hours, and I believed them. I just usually have other ones I plan on getting to first, or I'm just not that interested. There are many things I'm just not a fan of. I personally don't like gore, I'm pretty weak to horror visual novels, although I do think they're interesting. Some visual novels just aren't for me, which is fine. As I always say, everyone has the right to like what they like. I'm not gonna bash someone if their favorite visual novel of all time is Bible Black. Power to you, friend. It takes a brave soul to admit that to the world. And honestly, as long as it stays within the realm of fiction, that's the important thing. There are more visual novels out there than any one man can hope to finish, and hopefully this series of Z Memories has given you a better idea of what kind of visual novel reader I personally am. I made this series with the intention of letting you guys know more about myself from a visual novel perspective. I fully intend on branching out and covering stuff outside of VNs after this series, but I thought it'd be nice to have a big celebration of videos before I do so. Will Z Memories be my last visual novel related video? Of course not! But I do have plans to cover a bunch of Japanese related media stuff, and whatever else I find interesting, of course. And I hope you decide to stick along for the ride. As stated when I first made this channel, I make no promises that everything I show will be golden, but I hope it will at least be interesting to learn about. Like button is there as always. Twitter will be on the center of the end screen if you want to see what I'm up to during my downtime. Subscribe if you want to support me, and hit the notification and all button if you want to stay up to date when the next video comes out. The last day of Z Memories is coming up soon, which if you have been on my channel for any amount of time that isn't just the last month, then you probably already know what I'm gonna talk about. If you missed the previous Z Memories on Shari no Kuni, well, it's up there like always, with the bottom being something picked by the YouTube gods. With that, I will see you on the final day of Z Memories. Till next time!